Now, I know this is a football show, but we got to touch on one of the biggest sports news stories from the weekend. Shohei Ohtani agreed to a deal with the Blue Corner, $700 million he signed for to play with the Dodgers. Now, I got to ask you this question. What would you do? What would you buy if you had 700 million of them things?
I got this mapped out. First things first is I'm going to get a jet. Think about how much time you save. Like, you can access anywhere in the world. Second is I'm getting a chef.
Yeah.
And third, I'm going to invest in SpaceX. I'm knocking on the front door, maybe hitting up Elon. I want to invest in rockets, because with that money, I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I would be more maybe the chauffeur first rather than the jet. And I think the jet is something that, you want to have. But just for daily getting around, it'd be nice to have somebody pick you up, drop you off. You don't have to worry about sitting in traffic. The other thing I'm doing is I am going to build a small city. And it's going to be more geared toward affordable housing. But it's going to be high density of units. People can actually afford to live there. And I'm going to make a boatload of money doing it.
That's smart.
Yeah.
So not for your family. You're talking you're a man of the people.
For the people.
Okay, that's smart.
We got problems out here in society.
We
got
need to
money.
get JP 700 million.
I can solve them, and I can make a little bit more money on top of it. Sounds like a good plan to me. But you already know what time it is. This is Red Corner, Blue Corner, right here on Stadium. Standing by here with the Michigan Wolverine, Jake Butt. Multiple times he was an All-American, Mackey Award winner, team captain, wonderful ball player and a great friend.
And this is Joshua Perry, the national champion, also a captain for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and the All-State Good Hands Award for the community, which makes complete sense with how we opened the show. Keep interacting with us on Instagram, YouTube, because we need to get JP 700 million fast.
If we can do that, that would be a great thing. As Jake said, scan that QR code. You can submit your content. You can chime in on the conversation as well on YouTube, and then Red Corner _ Blue Corner on Instagram is where you can find us. But we got to talk about the other big piece of news coming out of college football this weekend, and that's the Heisman Trophy. And it was no surprise that LSU's Jayden Daniels won this year's award. He was averaging a first down every time he snapped the ball, which is crazy. If this guy was a running back, he probably would have been an All-American running back with his rushing numbers alone. He was spinning the hell out of the football. He becomes the third LSU Tiger to take home college football's highest individual honor. Now, what may have surprised people was the actual voting tally in a race that was considered a runaway. The margin between Daniels and runner-up Michael Penix was just 328 points. So are you surprised that this wasn't a little bit closer to a unanimous decision here?
Just watching this, my experience, I think it was a little bit, I felt it was going to be close. Like, there was people with very strong conviction on either side of the fence. And I talked to some voters. Anecdotally, every voter I talked to had Michael Penix as their #1 pick. I think the piece of this is when you talk about a Heisman moment, Penix had the Heisman moments, whereas Jayden Daniels was sheer volume. You mentioned it. I mean, he had tier 1 quarterback passing numbers. He had tier 1 rushing numbers as a quarterback, too.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's burned into my memory. Washington, Oregon, earlier in the year, Penix marching his team right down the field for a touchdown. I do put some weight in that. I will say this, though. I'm blown away by the character. I mean, Penix, everything he's been through in his career, that was a great storyline. Same thing with Jayden Daniels, though. The future's in good hands, man. Congratulations to Jayden, though.
I would say the same thing about Bo Nix and Marvin Harrison Jr., too. Like, these are all young people that I find very impressive, and I wouldn't have been mad if any of them would have won the award. I think that the voters got it right this time, though, with Jayden Daniels, and I've been stumping on this for a while. Like, you see the yards per attempt there. The amount of total touchdowns he had was ridiculous. I think he was averaging, like, 8 yards a rush this year, too. Wild numbers. And people go to this thing of he didn't play in games that mattered. He didn't play in games of consequence. And I go back to this idea of, so what? He did things that we had not seen an FBS quarterback do in the history of the Football Bowl subdivision, right? So as we start looking at the impact that he had on the game, I do not think you could tell the story of this season without mentioning his name as a prominent character. Same thing with Michael Penix, and he had the stages, but the consistency of the way he was able to dominate people stands out to me.
The Heisman goes to the nation's most outstanding player. I mean, that dude's outstanding, period, right? Just the film, the highlights, the numbers, he's outstanding. Funny thing, though, JP, he was a transfer.
Sure.
He started at Arizona State and made his way. We had some more transfer news over the weekend. Oregon's inaugural season in the Big Ten will feature former Oklahoma quarterback Dylan Gabriel under center. Let's just, I mean, JP, what do you think? How do you like the fit?
I think it fits, right? You're talking about a quarterback with an athletic skill set, a guy who is a competitor. I think that's probably his best attribute and trait. He's throwing the ball very well when he's healthy. He's a guy who is certainly an impact player. For Oregon, they want to make sure that they can ride the momentum that they've built over the last couple of seasons, in particular, as close as they got to the college football playoff this year. It seems like if they can carry that performance into next year, they'll be knocking on the door in the 12-team playoff. So I like bringing in a veteran guy who's been really productive, inserting him into that offense, and then just letting him take the reins.
You know, in real estate, they say location, location, location. And I believe for quarterbacks, fit, offense, system, that's what defines good quarterback play. And you look at Bo Nix, his career trajectory, where he was at Auburn to where he was at now. Certainly wasn't a Heisman candidate in the early portion of his career, and was the Heisman favorite at some point during the season. You look at his numbers, nearly 80% completion rate, 40 touchdowns to 3 interceptions on the season. You know, there is quarterbacks with talent that can't put up that number unless they're in the right system, though.
Right.
But those numbers tell me a story that if you're a veteran with experience and you're willing to learn, which I believe Dillon Gabriel is, then he's going to be in position to have very, very similar numbers. Oregon, as a program right now, they're just operating at an extremely high level. And what a huge get for the Ducks, as we talked about, just now entering the Big Ten. They got their most important piece figured out in their quarterback, JP.
It's the thing that I've been talking about with these newcomers to the Big Ten. I think their success is going to be defined on the ability to replace the productive outgoing quarterbacks, and Oregon is on their way with Dillon Gabriel.
Okay, so it leads into another good conversation because Dillon Gabriel has been around the block. This is not his second school. This is his third school in 6 seasons. Transferring all over the place. Are we past the point of return with where the transfer portal is?
Yes, absolutely. You see almost 1,300 players in the portal right now, and there's a door into the portal. There's not always a door out, and so we'll see where some of these guys end up landing. My biggest thing is I start to look at how collegiate careers are defined, or how they were defined at least at one point in time. And you and I have a home. Right, you have a home in Ann Arbor. I have a home in Columbus. If anything goes wrong, we can go back, we can call on some people, and they can help us navigate the treachery that is adult life. And I look at some of these young people right now, and I would ask, where is your home? Where are you going to go? Where is your legacy built? When people hear your name, what brand resonates with that? For you, it's the Wolverine brand, the Block M. I have the Block O. Some of these cats got nothing except for a bunch of jerseys that are going to be laying in a laundry pile one day.
You know, when I retired from playing, I mean, the first thing I did was reach out directly to the Michigan network. And I truly believe I know for a fact, actually, there wasn't a contact I wanted to make that I wasn't able to make immediately. People willing to help because you're part of a family. And I think the transfer portal, I'm for player mobility. I believe we've overcorrected, and I'm okay with that, right? And we were on one extreme before this. I think now we're closer to the other extreme. I do think we need to find a path forward because you're exactly right. I mean, some of these guys are 6, 7, 8 years in college, and they don't even have a degree.
That's wild.
I mean, and you talk about having a home too. You know, that is such a big piece of this, and I don't think, like, how do you measure the cost of that?
Right.
So say, you know, in the top quarterbacks will get 7 figures. Most guys are not making that money.
Right.
So say you might make $100,000. That's a lot of cash. But the value of having the network and having a degree, how do you measure that? And who's really saying that conversation either?
You brought up in the when we were having our meetings, Brandon Joseph, played at
Huge
Northwestern,
example.
All-American safety, transfers to Notre Dame, never hear of the guy again. So he was at 2 of the most prestigious universities in North America. Where is the guy right now? Does he have a degree from either one of these schools?
Oh my gosh.
And if he made this decision to jump in the portal to maybe get more exposure, whether it was a money thing, he might have messed up a multi-million-dollar opportunity at Northwestern to go to Notre Dame where it didn't pan out. And you might have made a couple $100,000 in the process. And this kid was a phenomenal player, somebody I really enjoyed. Obviously a smart kid to be able to get into either one of those universities. But my goodness, what are we doing right now?
He is the perfect example to just show the other side of this, right? You know, what did he make in NIL? $100,000, a quarter million, that is a lot of cash. But the network of Northwestern and Notre Dame is worth millions over your lifetime. A degree from either of those places is worth millions. Can you really call Northwestern, your family at Northwestern? I might say, hey, well, you left us. Sorry, man, you left us. Notre Dame, hey, you didn't really do anything for us, right? Not only that, he hurt his NFL draft stock, right? You're a star on Northwestern's defense. Did barely even play it at Notre Dame.
Doug, I think about this all the time, but my freshman year was really tough, and had I been a guy who was like, I need to run from it, I don't know if my life would look anything the way it looks right now. I'm on TV. Part of the reason why is because I was a national champion at Ohio State. When I first left the league, I got into business. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I was killing it because I was in Columbus, Ohio, a familiar face that people wanted to work with. And I feel like that is lost upon young people. They don't have the perspective, but I don't think the adults are giving them that perspective either. And that's the shame of all of this.
That's the conversation that needs to be had in order to correct and find balance from where we were to where we are now. Somewhere in the middle is the answer. So, of course, the transfer portal news does not stop, especially this time of year. And we've got two former Buckeyes that may be joining Matt Rule's squad, the Huskers. We'll get right to it after the break.
Welcome back. Did y'all know that we can run polls on YouTube and stadiums asking viewers to predict the college football playoff final? And most of the votes have Michigan taking on Texas in the championship game.
Blue corner, stand up, baby. That tells us a lot about our market. We appreciate you guys out there.
Don't let Nick Saban see this. I'll tell you that.
No,
right
do
now.
not let Nick Saban see this.
Yeah.
Do not let him see this.
Well, be sure to subscribe to Stadium on YouTube. Join the chat while you're at it.
And while we're at it, it's time for another edition of Message Board Mondays. And let's start in Nebraska, where there's exciting news. Kyle McCord and Julian Fleming, two former Buckeyes, are in Lincoln, Nebraska for their official visits. It's a move that's being received by Nebraska fans with a mixed bag. JP, what do you think of the fit right now as it applies to what Matt Rule is trying to do with the Cornhuskers?
Upgrade, right?
Upgrade.
At quarterback, 100%. Yeah. I think that they were one of the worst passing offenses in Service Academy and Iowa territory this past season, so certainly bringing in a Kyle McCord would upgrade what they're doing. I also think for Kyle McCord, like, this is a fan base that certainly wants to return to prominence, but their expectation is not national championship or bust. And I think for a guy who maybe had trouble reconciling with those expectations after having an 11-1 year, this might be a better fit for him just on a mental standpoint.
You know, and I think part of it is, you know, people look at the way the offense was run this year and say, well, like maybe they might have the false illusion that Matt Rule wants to be a triple option offense. And I think about where they're at as a team. Turnovers have killed them. I don't think Matt Rule wants to be like a triple option. I see him as more of a power and get into play action, minimizing these mistakes. What's killed them is the turnovers. It has killed them. So maybe you still have some of that, but Boyd is protecting the ball coming out of premium right now. Having McCord, I think, takes away some of the potential to turn the ball over, and like you said, would be an immediate upgrade. I like some of their young receivers too. Some of those guys have been explosive on tape. I think it's a great fit.
Yeah, the comment from Packer Husker fan up there, I think, was an interesting one, though. For a lot of offenses, they do like having a more mobile guy just so they can equate numbers. Kyle McCord, longest run on the season, 9 yards, certainly isn't that. And then Julian Fleming in the mix there. I think his biggest problem was a lack of consistency actually catching the football. His production dropped from a year ago. He was one of the top 3 wide receivers at Ohio State. I think the veteran presence is good because I know this guy works hard, but from a production standpoint, I don't know how much of an upgrade that would be.
He could benefit from a fresh start. For sure.
I think
he'd be one of those guys that benefits.
All right, you want to take it over to Rutgers because I know their fans are ecstatic about this news. Running back Kama Nungai will return next year. He led the Big Ten with almost 1,100 rushing yards this season. What are your expectations for him going into next year?
My expectations are for him to have the same season, if not better. Like, Manungai's a guy, I sleep easy at night knowing Manungai is the leader in my running back room. Coach Shiano has called him like he is the prototypical guy for the program, a program guy. But my expectations are beyond him. Can they get a complimentary passing game? Boy, would that help them. Can their defense have the season that they did this year?
Right.
I mean, the defense played lights out.
Did.
There's more room to go backwards than there is to increase. All those things will benefit Manungai. I have no worries about him as an individual.
I mean, you just asked some of these message board posters, though. I mean, they think Kama Nungai is going to have them in New Year's Six bowl game next year.
What do you think?
I think that he is phenomenal. I agree with just about everything you said, though. I think that they need to level up their passing attack sorely. Like, they cannot continue to run into heavy boxes and expect Manungai to make them right every time, making guys miss, running guys over. Like, he was great at forcing missed tackles and yards after contact. You cannot continue to put your running back in that spot, though, because bodies just can't hold up through all of that.
Yep.
All right, you want to take it over to Minnesota now.
Let's just go around the whole Big Ten.
Yeah,
why not?
Might as well, because they're looking for a new defensive coordinator after Joe Rossi has left the school for the same position at Michigan State, and the Gopher faithful are now saying the program is crumbling. How does Rossi fit at Michigan State?
He fits anywhere. Rossi's just a damn good coach, period. You know, he's a great football mind. That message right there sums it up for me, where it said Rossi could have left because of money, Rossi could have left because of this, Rossi could have left because of that. It could be any reason. The fact of the matter is for Minnesota, you are better with Joe Rossi on your staff. You are better with Joe Rossi as your defensive coordinator. You are now worse with him not on the staff. Michigan State, immediate upgrade. Michigan State's defense needs to get back to playing the way they did under D'Antonio, tough, physical. That's what he's going to bring in for them. I think it's a great fit. But for Minnesota, I mean, that is a gigantic hole to fill going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a wonderful coordinator too. I think that there is a writing that is on the wall right now at Minnesota that we need to address. And I'm not here to say that the program truly is crumbling, but I do think that they're arriving at an inflection point here where PJ Fleck has been talking about NIL incessantly and how he can't recruit with it, nor can he keep his roster together with it. Somebody pointed out, Kirk Shiraka out the door. That was a guy that was with PJ Fleck for a long time, and now you have Joe Rossi, the coordinator on the other side of the ball, that is out the door. What do you do with these things, and how do you continue to build a program when you have turnover not only on your roster, but with your coaching staff, and quite frankly, a coach in PJ Fleck, who I think is a good ball coach, but probably tough to be around because of all the energy that's required to work around him.
And gosh, man, the thing is it's getting harder. There's no more East and West now. It's open field. So, I mean, it's only going to get harder from here.
Yeah, we got a comment from Greatness here. It says, any special giveaway prizes for the holiday season? I don't know, Dennis.
You know we like to give things away. I bet we got something cooked up.
We probably got some tricks up our sleeve. We'll get it figured out. Make sure you enter when we announce what the prizes are going to be. But we're going to take our last break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, and on the other side, you already know what's coming up. It's time for the Conference Clash, and today, that means we're getting our nerd on. That and so much more on the other side. got a piece of news if you guys didn't know out there, but Stadium is your home for the U.S. Army Bowl. Jake, you played in that game, right?
I did. It was an awesome experience. I mean, for me, it was like the first experience of what college is like. It's like a true preview for college. All these high school guys, they dominate their schools. Now you get to see them against one another. I'm
excited for that one. That game will stream for free live on Stadium on Monday, December 18th, so be sure that you tune in for that one. But it's time for a little conference clash over here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. So we're going to bring in our guys, T-Bob Hebert, who's back from a wonderful vacation, SEC Mike, who's been holding it down. T-Bob, how was vacation, buddy?
It was excellent, boys. It was excellent. I am a Disney nerd with my kids. I love it so much. Look, this might not be good, especially in this business, but I work to live, okay? I don't live to work. And so I get the hell up out of there. I managed to finally get over them just once again giving Alabama unearned opportunity for a championship as I was sitting there enjoying my 5-year-old, my 3-year-old, my 1-year-old. It was freaking awesome, dude. I loved it. And look at this fire Tommy B I came back with. See the Mickey Christmas? Look at that.
T-Bob, I got to ask you for my own curiosity. How do you balance the potential of a hangover with young kids, right? Because that is their magic down there. But it's also a good time at Disney as well, right?
Yes, Jake, you hit on a very good point, which many may not realize. If we were to rank the top 3 beers in the world, it might be number 1 for me, but it's definitely up there for anybody. An Epcot beer at the end of a 10-mile theme park day is awesome. And sometimes those can turn into 6 to 8 to 10 Epcot beers. But my old man raised me with a very simple saying. If you want to hoot with the Owls at night, you got to soar with the Eagles during the day. So the bottom line is you do it because you have to. Okay, you hydrate before bed, and then you just get your ass up, and you go smile, and you have fun, and ride the ride.
All right, I'm definitely here for that. Thank you for that little rundown right there. Now, we saw a few posts from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. T-Bob, you voiced your Star Wars fandom, but this is a question to the group, T-Bob. I'm going to let you sit this one out because we already know that you are a nerd. We'll start with you, SEC Mike, but what do you like to nerd out on?
I'm a big comic book guy, believe it or not. So I love the movies. I actually have a comic book collection. So, yeah, I'm definitely a nerd, too.
Yeah, so I nerd out on a couple different things. Lately, I'm getting into these Lego builds, though.
Of course.
And I don't know if you guys are into it down there in SEC country. They are fun. I mean, I'm talking. I'm completely locked in. It's not a finished product, but this will be the pyramids in Egypt, and I cannot wait. I spent about 3.5 hours on this yesterday.
Oh,
I got at least another 3 hours to go. So, highly recommend it.
I'll tell you right now, I appreciate what you guys are into. I am not that type of a nerd. If there's one thing that I do nerd out on, it's probably leadership philosophy. I always told myself if I would waste money going back to school to get a master's degree, I would study organizational leadership. I just love how groups come together and people motivate others toward a common goal. I think it's really fun, but like comic books and all that other stuff, it ain't for me.
What would it be like to have a passion that had actual functional value? I have no idea. I mean, it seems like, Joshua, it seems like it must be great. I'm with you, though, Jake. I love painting miniatures, and I know the kind of zen pleasure that comes from, okay, here's what I'm doing, and I am just locked in on this thing, and I am doing it. Mike, what are you a little basic Marvel boy? You got any room for DC in there?
No, DC's for trash people. I like Spider-Man. I like X-Men. Those are my go-to for sure. And that's why those are the biggest movies and the best movies.
So you do all the movies and everything too then?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I nerd out. I'm there at midnight. You know, I'll watch them 3-4 times in the theater.
Do you have any collections? I know the Right magazine can go for some high ticket prices.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I have some just individual books that are probably worth $20,000 a piece, and I have nearly a complete run of Amazing Spider-Man, which is the main Spider-Man series.
Sell them.
Okay.
We got to see that.
Okay. Good. Well, we're just going to cancel today's show. I'm sorry, Dan. We're going to continue to talk about comic books and superheroes, and no. You know what? We can talk about a superhero, and that is my guy, Jayden Daniels, winning the Heisman Trophy over the weekend. How about it, boys? Jayden Daniels becoming the 3rd LSU player to win the Heisman, joining Joe Burrow and Billy Cannon. Of course, if you were to talk to many LSU fans, after living through the Les Miles years, if you would have told them that not a decade later you'd have 2 quarterbacks take home that trophy, I think everybody would have thought you were insane. But, boys, I know we have our differences in red corner, blue corner, and rivals down south, and even me and Mike within rivals have our different. Can we at least come together and agree that the correct Heisman winner was chosen? Joshua, we'll start with you.
I've been saying it for weeks, and I know I had to stump for
Yeah.
Marv, and I think that he's wonderful, and maybe we could talk about the Biletnikoff because that is an interesting conundrum there. But the idea that Jayden Daniels wouldn't win the award this year was absolutely wild to me after watching the numbers that he put up, and I'm glad that the voters came to their senses and got over this. You got to be in games of importance and magnitude by the end of the year. You have to have a Heisman moment. The whole damn season was a Heisman moment for that guy.
Look, what's the Heisman say? It goes to the most outstanding player, not the best player on the most winningest team, right? I mean, you just turn on the tape. He passes the eye test, man. I mean, he has tier 1 quarterback numbers, has tier 1 running back numbers as a quarterback. He checks every box.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I mean, he may be the best quarterback. Obviously, I think he's the best quarterback in the country, but he may be the most dynamic running back in the country. How can you not give it to Jayden Daniels? And T-Bob, credit to you. You go to a school where they actually reward you with Heismans. I went to a school where all they do is steal the Heisman away from other players.
And so here we arrive. So for those that may not know SEC Mike's background, Tennessee, the Vols are where he calls home and his kind of allegiance of choice. And so, look, Volunteer fans will never get over Peyton Manning not taking home that Heisman with Charles Woodson winning. Jake, do you have any other Heisman snubs that jump out in your mind through the years?
Absolutely, because I just came across this graphic the other day. Ndamukong Suh had one of the most historically dominant seasons in college football history. As an interior defensive lineman, this is ridiculous. Look at this. Alabama, Texas, and Florida in 2009. Some of the best teams in all of college football. These are their collective defensive line stats. As an individual, he's tied with them for TFLs. He's tied with them for sacks. And it's even more impressive as an interior defensive lineman, guys. You know you're getting double teamed on every single play. This is just bananas to look at those stats. He's a dominant force.
What about you, Joshua? Anybody jump out?
Yeah, I think there are 2 players in my mind that I think it's hard to talk about college football without mentioning their names. Number 1 would be Vince Young, and he was a machine, dual-threat guy. He did everything it seems like a modern-day Heisman Trophy winner would do for their team. You know, we're talking about some of the best teams in the country at the time he was quarterback there. The numbers are on par with what you would want your Heisman quarterback to look like. And then Michael Vick, right? Mike Vick was a video game back in the day, right? Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about dudes that do eye-popping things, dudes that kind of, you know, you watch the game and you say, he's a little bit different than the rest of the guys playing the game right now. I think he's one of the best that never won it.
Boys, I gotta say, so nobody really jumped out of my head. Of course, like the famous Peyton Manning thing, everything else. So I started doing some Googling, saying, okay, who can I find? Have y'all ever looked up Randy Moss's 1997 season at Marshall?
Yeah.
In 13 games, he had 96 catches for 1,800 yards and 26 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He also returned a punt for a touchdown in that year. Like, that is 19 yards per catch on 96 of them things with 26 touchdowns. The year before, he actually had 28 touchdowns. So, yeah, Randy Moss, someone who deserves to be mentioned. Mike, real quick before we get to the Biletnikoff discussion, I'll allow you the floor to complain about Peyton Manning, something I'm sure you've done multiple times.
It's 30 years later. We're still doing documentaries on how Peyton Manning was robbed. I mean, it's highway robbery. Hendon Hooker, he didn't even get invited to the Heisman. That was a travesty. And I believe the only guy to win it with a losing record, who did he beat out? Johnny Majors, all-time great Tennessee running back, finished second. I mean, this is like a Tennessee curse here, but I would also throw Darren McFadden in here. He finished twice, second in the Heisman voting twice. That's insane. Steve Spurrier left him off the ballot when he torched South Carolina Gamecock. Give Darren his due.
Yeah, that backfield, McFadden, Felix Jones, and Peyton Hillis was one of the sneaky all-time good ones from Arkansas back in the day. All right, Joshua, let's get into it. Biletnikoff. It comes out that Marvin Harrison Jr. beats Malik Neighbors by 1 vote when it's all said and done. Now, of course, Neighbors had the statistical edge. We know that. He later tweeted out, remember that, so disrespectful. And LSU fans are all, he had better stats. I'll start this one. I'll pass to you, Joshua. To me, this is almost a bit of an impossible conversation to have.
Yep.
Because the argument for Harrison is that he had a less than quarterback, whereas obviously Malik Nabers has the Heisman winner throw it to him, and it's a solid argument. But it's also equally weird where it's like, okay, are you going to then punish Nabers for having a better quarterback? And so at the end of the day, it just becomes a thing where I think people just voted on who they think is better, regardless of statistics, and maybe the name recognition helped somewhat in terms of winning such a tight race.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that stats are certainly important. I don't think that you can make any decision off of any of these awards based off of stats because the situations certainly are different. And for Marvin Harrison Jr., I would lean into the idea that he had a quarterback that was not the most outstanding player in college football throwing him the ball. And I think you could easily extrapolate that if he had a more competent quarterback, that he probably would have had numbers that were closer to the level of Malik Nabers. I also think it comes down to, and this is where voters, I don't like that they do this, but I understand how they do it, is I think that some people look back at Marv last year and saw how good he was. But he was also playing on an offense that had a bunch of other guys that they had to split the pill with. You can make an argument that this year was a very similar thing. A guy like Emeka Ibuka and Cade Stover at tight end. And the idea maybe for some of the voters was a little bit of a lifetime achievement, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I look at Marv, even if you take the standalone from this year, and you say if he had C.J. Stroud back there throwing him the ball this year like he did a year ago, numbers would have been totally different. Also, flip on the tape, dude's an alien. He's a freak. He's strong. He's fast. He can go up and get the ball. Best contested catch wide receiver I've seen in a very long time. Like, he has some of those traits where you watch the highlight plays, and it's really hard to unsee them. And it's not to say that Nabers doesn't have similar plays because that dude is an alien in his own right. But I think a lot of people got caught up in that. And ultimately, it came to the right decision in my mind that Marvin Harrison Jr. wins the award.
Well, and I mean, you see it every now and then. I think famously around these parts, like when Grant Delpit won the Thorpe, a lot of people felt like that was more of him winning it for his 2018 year, not 19, in which he struggled with it. So those things do happen. And look, Marvin Harrison Jr. was unstoppable in the big games. Michigan, Penn State, right? Like, he showed up when it mattered most. I know he had Jake pretty scared there in that Michigan game. What about you, Mike? Where do you fall in this debate?
Well, the SEC can't win all the awards, T-Bob, even though they probably deserve to win. We gotta give some to these other contestants that are not even making the playoffs. So I get it, but no, I mean, Marvin Harrison. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. Did Malik Nabers even lead his team in touchdown receptions? Again, I don't know that we hold that against him, but he's just got so much help around him. So I get the debate of why Marvin Harrison. Give him a little bit of an edge. I don't want to say he was doing it all on his own because I think that's disrespectful. But clearly, I think if you were to ask people who is a more dominant player, it pains me to say this. I think I would go Marvin Harrison.
We're going to see. Both these guys are going to be playing on Sunday, and once you get to Sunday, that's when it's an equal playing field, and it's going to be fascinating to see who will go on to have more success. You're right, Mike. They can't win it them all, which is why, oh, my God, Alabama fans are so upset Will Richard didn't win the Luke Rosa. Get the hell out of here, Alabama. Get the hell out of here, dude. All right, still to come, we have some groundbreaking news regarding a certain bowl game. Plus, is the transfer portal helping or hurting SEC teams? We'll break it down next here on Rivals Down South. Welcome back here to Rivals Down South. YouTube.com/Watch Stadium is your place to get involved. Nolan Hawley agrees with me that theme park beers are elite. Good man, Nolan. Check this out, though. We got some groundbreaking news. For the first time in history, we will have a bowl game with an edible mascot. You may be saying, well, hold on a second now, T-Bob. I watched Prince Chedward and the royal family last year, the Cheez-It Bowl and everything. Yes, fair. Those are representative of foods that you can eat. But the Pop-Tarts Bowl, featuring NC State and Kansas State, will have a giant Pop-Tart mascot that the winning team gets to take a bite out of once the game is over. That's right. So get your Duke's mayonnaise dumped the hell up out of here, because now, Mike, for the first time, and I know this is how y'all like to do it in Cousin Shane's Backwoods, you can eat and consume a fully sentient living being without going to jail. All your hopes and dreams are coming true here, Mike.
Well, in fairness, you can eat the mayo, too. We have physically done that on our podcast, dumped the mayo and ate it. But, yeah, I don't know if you've seen this, T-Bob. Tennessee's playing in the Cheez-It Bowl against Iowa. There's a growing movement. They want the Tennessee checkerboard to be Tennessee /Cheez-It checkerboard, and fans are outraged at this. We cannot have Cheez-Its over the beloved Tennessee end zone. But now I'm curious what that flavor is going to be on that Pop-Tart.
Also, to be clear here, you're talking about eating mayo out of a jar. I'm talking about eating off of a Pop-Tart that a living being is currently inhabiting. I find that to be very odd and wonderfully representative of the quirkiness of college football. Also, bro, when you eat Pop-Tarts, you ever put any butter on them things? You ever done that? This old Fat Boy special. Yeah, you heat that thing up, slap some butter on the backside. Ooh, my God, dude. Again, very fat, very unhealthy, but I'll be damned if it don't taste good. But I'm excited for bowl season, man. I'm pumped. And look, the SEC, hey, made the playoff right on, right? Despite the fact that the out-of-conference did not go that well at the beginning of this year. Yet the SEC still sending 9 teams bowling. Actually, the lowest since 2020 when only 8 teams. Last year, the conference finishes 7-5. In 2021, it was 6-8. Do you judge conference success by bowl success?
I typically don't, T-Bob, but I think this season in the SEC, we kind of have to, because we got nothing else to cling to. I know there's some people that don't think Alabama even belongs in the playoff, but aside from, what will happen in the playoff, and I'm counting Texas as SEC, they ain't going back to the Big 12 ever again, but, moving aside from the playoff, I think this is going to be how a lot of people decide whether the SEC is, up to snuff this year. And I'm particularly looking at games like Mizzou versus Ohio State. I'm looking at Tennessee, Iowa. I'm looking at even Georgia over Florida State, which doesn't seem to even want to be there. If the SEC loses any of those games, I think that's a huge black eye for the conference.
Well, I mean, Georgia, Florida State would be an absolute disaster, right? Like Florida State's devastated at this point. If you can't put the wounded animal that are the Seminoles out of their misery, then you got bigger problems if you're the Georgia Bulldogs. I think Ole Miss has a massive opportunity against Penn State here because, first off, I don't think Penn State's that good. Not this year. I think they have an incredible defense, right? But I think the offense is very pedestrian. And if you look at Ole Miss, I was shocked, Mike. They've had great teams in the past, right? But because they used to not play as many games back in the days, and they kind of fell off in the modern era, Ole Miss has never won 11 games, ever, in over 100 years of playing football. So here you are. You're telling me they have a chance to win 11 games. They have a chance for a New Year's Six Bowl over a blue blood like Penn State, right? You got Jackson Dart returning next year. It gives you some added hype going into that next season. Like, I think the opportunity for Ole Miss is huge here.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's something that, I've been giving a lot of thought to because neither one of these coaches, Lane Kiffin or James Franklin, seems to win the big game. Penn State can't get over Michigan and Ohio State more often than not. Ole Miss can't get over Alabama. Now, Georgia, they're playing them back-to-back years. I mean, they need one to sell that they can be elite among the nation. That's where they're both trying to get to in this 12-team era of the college football playoff. And I think, winning this game is going to be massive for both programs. So the loser's going to catch a ton of heat, like you're saying. The losing coach, I'm not putting him on the hot seat, but that narrative that he cannot win a big game will just linger on for another offseason. They're going to have to hear about it for 7-8 months.
Yeah, and it sets a tone for the offseason, right? Like Penn State dominating Utah was one of the reasons why they had so much positive momentum going into 2023. Now, Mizzou, Ohio State, you mentioned that matchup. I find this one to be kind of fascinating, Mike, because I don't think there is any pressure on Mizzou. I think Eli Drinkwitz is completely playing with house money right now, right? Like if you just look at stuff like blue chip ratio, there's no way that Mizzou should be able to hang with Ohio State. If you're just going by your beloved eye test and recruiting rankings, there's no way that Mizzou should be in this game, whereas it would be an absolute disaster were Ryan Day to lose to Mizzou after losing 3 years in a row now to Michigan, losing the Big Ten. Like Ohio State actually needs this one where, Mizzou, the hay's already kind of in the barn. So you have a Tiger team that can go play free. They can play fun. They're, like I said, house money for the Tigers.
Right. I see what you're saying, but these bowl games, particularly when they're nationally televised, there's no other games on at the time. I think the national perception, T-Bob, if you don't pay attention to these games or these teams leading up to these games, is Ohio State should dominate. Ohio State, arguably a top 4 or 5 program in the country. Mizzou, how did they even get to 10 wins in the mighty SEC? Must have been a fluke, right? I mean, I think that's going to be the narrative. So I think there's a lot to be gained by Missouri. They're picking it up on the recruiting trail. This is the best season yet under Eli Drinkwitz. They changed the state laws, D-Bob, to help this program. If you can sell a big-time win over Ohio State, I think you have asserted yourself as a program officially on the rise in the SEC, one that has got to be considered for the 12-team playoff next season. So I get what you're saying, but I think there's a lot on the line to kind of prove it. They call it the show me state. They got to show it to the country that does not pay attention that this is a new era of Mizzou football.
Well, and yes, I do want to be clear here. There is a ton to gain for them, but not that much to lose, which does make them dangerous, right? Whereas the kind of inverse for Ohio State, almost nothing to gain by the win, but a lot to lose were they to actually fall. And you mentioned Mizzou. They fascinate me because like LSU, like Georgia, they're the only Power 5 team in the state, okay? So granted, like Louisiana, Missouri state economy may not be the best, but you have an entire state economy in the age of NIL being funneled into their major flagship university, and you're starting to see it pay dividends both in the high school recruiting trail and in the portal. As Missouri's already taken advantage. They add Georgia State running back Marcus Carroll. Carroll's a guy who had Georgia State for the Panthers last year, ran for over 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns. They added Toriano Pride from Clemson, a great cornerback. The portal is popping off. It's going to continue to provide us with news and exciting, like basically free agent signings to break down and really think about. But how do you feel about the job that Eli Drinkwitz has done here early on?
I mean, it's a masterclass, T-Bob, and I think in part it goes back to what I was saying, how they've changed the NIL laws to help Missouri out. I think that is crucial, but I think the blueprint is there. And maybe more teams need to look at this, T-Bob, because this is the first time Drink has even had a winning record at Mizzou. I mean, he was on the hot seat about 3 months ago. They were unclear whether this was the man for the future. They're booing their starting quarterback while being undefeated leading into that Kansas State game. But patience has paid off for that Missouri fan base and Eli Drinkwitz, and they are going to be losing some defenders to the NFL, but they're already attacking it in the portal. Cody Schrader, this is his final season. I think he's going to get 30, 35 carries against Ohio State, just pound and pound and pound. And they're already addressing the deficiencies they're going to have on next year's roster. I think Mizzou is here to stay.
Yeah, and well, it's one of those things where, like, when coaches want to complain about how coaches are treated or this or that or that, like, look at Eli Drinkwitz this year and understand football is one of the last bastions of meritocracy, right? Where we treat you how you deserve. If you win the games, you get all the flowers, you get all the love. If you lose the games, people are going to want blood. They're going to want you fired. Don't get mad. Just do what Eli Drinkwitz did and just find ways to win. We'll continue to break down the portal. Look, right now you got SEC players going all over, but just remember this, guys, as we enter portal season, because right now I know if you're an A&M fan, a South Carolina fan, a Vanderbilt fan, you probably hurting. Okay, you're feeling bad, but always remember, the portal giveth, and the portal taketh away. Okay, you're going to have your low moments, you're going to have your high moments, but at the end of the day, you just have to hope they have more high than low. Still to come, it is Message Board Monday. And one Georgia Bulldog fan has a conspiracy theory about next year's schedule. One Rebel fan with a mind-blowing idea how to fund their NIL. Coming up next. Welcome back here to Rivals Down South. T-Bob and SEC Mike hanging out there. It's time for Message Board Monday. And we begin with a conspiracy theory from a Georgia Bulldog fan saying, quote, choosing our date to be in the same weekend as F1, it creates the best opportunity for them to eliminate us taking over their stadium. So schedule it when it will be the most expensive to ensure more Longhorn fans will be there. Insecurity at its finest. Yes, of course, Mike. F1 and all of the uber powerful people involved in the sport, they plan everything around the college football schedule. What could be more obvious? Keeper Dog is onto it here.
Right, and the only F1 fan that I know, he couldn't even name half the teams that are in the SEC. So I think this one might be a tad bit off base.
Wait until Auburn fans find out they visit Georgia on Talladega weekend next year. On the Ole Miss message boards, we had It Have Been a Rebel. He has a novel idea on how to fund their NIL program. First, quote, first, if you are a homeowner, take out a HELOC. I'm guessing this is like, remortgage, right? Then it's at least $100K. Donate 95% of the money to the Grove Collective immediately so we can land the big recruits. Put the remaining 5% down on the Rebels to win the Natty. The odds will be high enough that when the bet cashes, you can pay back the loan before the bank has time to foreclose. This is genius. If you aren't willing to mortgage your future for your favorite team to win a Natty, there's no other way that Ole Miss is going to get over the hump.
Right, and I could just imagine those families. No Christmas, no presents for Johnny and Susie. We've got to land this 4-star receiver from Houston that may go to the Texas Longhorns. I mean, this is brilliant.
It is brilliant. And look, they need the transfer portal more than anyone. LSU fan Tigbit writes, quote, now will Mike get invited to live at the Heisman house? So he should have been included after Joe Burrow got it. That's right. Joe Burrow notably absent from the Heisman house. I was worried it was going to hold Jayden back. It did not. Hopefully both Mike and Jayden can be living with Barry Sanders and Baker Mayfield. SEC Mike, you have a great day. So glad to be back. And we'll be back tomorrow with more Rivals.